Hey folks, as you can see, I'm making this video today describing and talking about the flooding that we've seen. US flooding. There was also devastating flooding in India recently. Their monsoon season, we call it hurricane season over here. They have monsoon season in India and in that part of the world. I'm going to be showing some, a few charts here as I show some of the indicators, mostly relative to the nakshatras and the element of water. You can see Mars was recently in Ardra. This was just a few weeks ago when a lot of the devastating flooding was hitting India. Also, now we have these nakshatras have backed up. So I'm going to be into other nakshatras, and we just had the eclipse. So I'm going to be breaking these things down in this video. Please like the video. Clicking like helps a lot more than you know. It pushes the video higher in relevant video searches. Also, please leave a nice comment. Comments also help more than you know as it raises the video in searches. Many times with it does, and thank you for doing that. I want to just jump right in here. So again, like the video, please leave a positive comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't before. Again, because I do these updates about world events, current events, elections, all that kind of stuff. So as you see, the thrust of this is to really explain and show, all of this devastating flooding that we've been having here in the US, especially. I went to check. And one of the things that happened, we had about a month ago, this real devastating flooding hit India in early September and throughout September. At that time, Mars had been going through Ardra. We also have Rahu is in the nakshatra of Uttara bhadra in the sign of Pisces. But also at that time, Saturn was in the nakshatra of Purva bhadra, which is not really related to water. It's more related to the sky and lightning. But certainly Rahu and Mars were both in very watery nakshatras. Uttara bhadrapada is literally called the serpent of the deep. Or I'm sorry, the nakshatra ruler is called Ahibudnya, who is the serpent of the deep. So again, it's in the sign of Pisces, and it's like the deep water of Pisces, where we go down into the depths, right? Of the sort of psyche, if you want to look at it, like emotionally or psychologically or whatever. But it's literally called serpent of the deep. And it's one of these, it's a Shiva type of nakshatra. The deity Ahibudnya is one of the assistants of Lord Shiva, who are called the Maruts, and they are the attendants of Lord Shiva, and they're really like related to the storm gods and things like that. So Ardra is another very famous and well-known and infamous nakshatra related to flooding and water and devastation. So again, especially, we're paying attention to it now in America because we're getting hurricanes and they're quite devastating now. But in India, they had been dealing with landslides from flooding and monsoon season and whatnot for quite a while now, because this was, this is about a month ago. Well, this is actually a few weeks ago, but if you take it back about a month, Mars was ripping through Ardra nakshatra while Rahu was in Uttara bhadrapada. So what's recently changed is this, as you see this now, again, this is about a month or so ago, or actually this is even September 28th, Mars was still at the end of Ardra, right? But we can see what has happened is Mars has gone into Punarvasu. This is October the 9th, but Saturn has gone retrograde back into shatabishak. Shatabishak is another nakshatra that's related to water. Literally, the deity is called Varuna, and Varuna is the god of the celestial water. And Varuna is actually akin to literally the celestial water, like the water in the upper atmosphere, because again, all the moisture in the upper atmosphere, it's sort of kinetic potential is akin to things like, again, storms and clouds and water in the upper atmosphere that can become a storm and lead to flooding. So again, this nakshatra of shatabishak is like the water and the energy that's in the upper atmosphere. And then the next nakshatra of Bhadra, like you see here, Saturn in Bhadra. Bhadra is actually related to lightning. Because again, first you need the water and the moisture in the atmosphere to create all of the potential for lightning. You see Bhadra, the lightning that comes down and strikes the earth. That's more of the deity here, which is called Aja Ekapada, which again has to do with lightning, right? So it's not as much about flooding in Bhadra. But uttara bhadra, again, is then the water, the serpent of the deep in Pisces. But Varuna is like the atmospheric water, who is the ruler of shatabishak. So you see, even though Mars left Ardra and went into Punarvasu, Saturn went retrograde back into shatabishak. So it's like this switch. One changed from a nakshatra related to water, and the other one went back into it. Now I'm saying this because these are also the general malefics. And again, those who've studied with me or have heard me speak for a long time know that in general, the planets are neutral, because what can be a natural malefic like Saturn is a functional benefic for Libra, Taurus, etc. So when you're doing natal charts, you have to see these things with great nuance because it's very specific. But in what we call mundane astrology, which is this kind of stuff, when you're doing events and you're looking at, do we have good things or bad things, right? When you see devastation and flooding and death and calamity and catastrophe, it's often the malefic planets that can bring it, that do bring it, right? Mars brings things, getting destroyed. Rahu is, shocking, sudden, unexpected things. Saturn is literally like death and structures breaking apart or being supported. But we also have Ketu, and we're also near these eclipses, which again I didn't forget, because you can see this is September 28th. We had the solar eclipse on October 2nd. So this is right before the moon moved here. And this eclipse is in Virgo, which is also very much about rebuilding. So again, we could see this as a literal thing in life. This autofocus camera. We could see this as a literal thing in life. This camera autofocus. Okay. Or we can see it as, like the flooding. But also, I've been saying this whole year, with all of the Rahu going through Pisces and the kind of transformation, dissolution, devastation, destruction, things getting blown apart, needing to let go of major structures in our life. This once Rahu went into Pisces, again, I talked about it a lot in the eclipses earlier. We need to let go of a lot of structure in our life during this time. Rahu in Pisces is like dissolving the structure. Ketu in Virgo is literally reinforcing a certain structure. So literally in this context, we can even see after the flood, after these devastating floods, this eclipse was actually in Virgo. So you could say, well, how come the eclipse is in Virgo? That's not the devastating flood. No, but it's about putting things back together now. The flood comes in, and again, notice what this is. These are monsoons that come. These are only a couple hours. That hurricane and the Hurricane Milton that's about to hit Florida, this will only be for a few hours that it actually happens. Let's say a day or two, let's say at the most. But even a day or two is 24, 36 hours. The most severe devastation comes all of a sudden, dumps all that water very quickly, and then you deal with the aftermath of the devastation for years. Okay, so this is why you get things, again, we have to understand what these things are. It's not a rainstorm that goes for a long time. It's a sudden, shocking, devastating bam that comes. Again, this is very much, again, the Rahu in Pisces, uttara bhadra. But then we have to spend all this time repairing and restoring, organizing, bringing all these details back together again. So when you think about your life, this is a metaphor for your life. There's some part of your life that's getting devastated, getting destroyed, getting blown apart, getting reconstituted, and you're having to evaluate, is it worth rebuilding this thing? rebuilding this thing from scratch. And it might surprise you what that is, what the thing is that you need to rebuild. For example, I've had a lot of change and transformation in my career because Rahu's go through my 10th house, dissolving certain parts of it and et cetera, et cetera. But right now, the real focus isn't on that part. It's on this 4th house part, because that's where we just had the eclipse. So you'd be like, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that I have to psychologically evaluate whether or not rebuilding certain parts of things are worth it. Do I feel like it? Because again, the roots of the tree are being what's being focused on now with the Ketu eclipse, for example. So this Ketu and rebuilding affects everyone differently. Again, it's affecting me that way. I have a Gemini ascendant. So I'm seeing a lot of the dissolution and things changing in the 10th house of work, career, status, whatever that might be. And I have to decide, what parts of that do I want to rebuild? Do I want to rebuild it at all? What's going to make me fortified and happy in my heart and connected to my, deeper feeling nature, right? So again, the 4th and 10th houses work in tandem that way, right? If you're, let's say, a Scorpio person, right? Rahu has been devastating the 5th house, creativity, blah, blah, but you have to see what's worth recreating publicly and things like that. So again, this eclipse cycle and this flood that we see externally is also akin to a metaphoric actual flood in your life that's happening. By the way, I have been talking about these Rahu Ketu assessments. If you haven't gotten one from me, I'll look at your chart about Rahu Ketu in your chart, and then also how these eclipses have affected you. I'll have a link, and you can use 24 special to get a $50 discount, me speaking for 30 minutes about how these eclipses are flooding and devastating parts of your life. I don't have to ask if they are. I know they are. And again, it doesn't mean it's bad. It can be bad if you don't know what's going on. It can be confusing. I'm glad I know. And even just knowing what it is doesn't mean it's easier, frankly, like with myself and like wondering so it's being figured out in real time. I'm still really, and it could be all kinds of things with 4th house, like with me. I could completely move and do all kinds of things. This 4th house has to do with the home, the heart, where you're anchored, where you, and again, all of it's up for grabs. And it's still happening. So, and again, I'm not asking if it's happening in your life. I know it is. I know you are experiencing a sort of devastating dissolution flood in some area of your life, and you're being challenged to rebuild, repair, and restore certain parts of it in another aspect of your life. It's just a matter if you understand this, if you want more insight into that, you can have me talk about it in general, first of all, because again, the basis of even that reading is where's Rahu and Ketu in your natal chart? What's your basic relationship with these two energies? And then where is this eclipse happening? And by the way, the other thing, and I'll have links to both of these, the other thing that I'm also doing now is the importance of the Nakshatras. They're incredibly important. And like we just saw, the Nakshatras are really what is showing things, even like all this flooding. There's only one planet in water sign right now, and that's Rahu in Pisces. But it's not like we've had floods the whole time. No, the real reason why we've been seeing these floods, Mars going through Ardra, and again, you can draw this up on a chalkboard. Ardra, floods. It's related to the storm god, Rudra, the bringer of the storm, uttara bhadra. It's a storm god. The Maruts, the Rudras is what they're called. Those attendants of Lord Shiva, they're actually called the Maruts, and they're called the Rudras. The deity of uttara bhadra is one of the Rudras. And Ardra Nakshatra is ruled by Rudra. So again, and then as soon as Mars left Ardra and went into Punarvasu, Saturn went back into another watery nakshatra, Varuna. So again, these nakshatras are incredibly powerful. And I've been doing these nakshatra hero's journey readings for quite a while, where I talk about the 4 most important nakshatras in your life, which, because the nakshatras are not ruled by planets, they're ruled by deities. They're connected to planets through the Vimshottari Dasha scheme, but they're ruled by deities. So whatever the moon deity is in your chart, like for mine, it's Vishaka. So that's Indra and Agni. So that shows an emotional mind and psychological temperament. The sun deity, wherever that is, it rules your deeper drive for spiritual liberation. For mine, it's actually Ardra. It's actually Shiva is my sun deity, right? The ascendant deity rules the individual path and actions that feel most natural. For me, the ascendant deity is Soma because it's Mrigashira Nakshatra. So that shows my individual path and actions are like a deer, Mrigashira. And also the ruling planet deity, that special ace in the hole, because the ruling planet, like for me, it would be Gemini. In my case, it's also in Mrigashira. So these 4 nakshatras show this hero's journey. Because, and again, the hero's journey is that transcendent nature that's not just of this world. That transcendent soul nature that has this kind of flood, stormy quality. Like I said, my sun is in Ardra Nakshatra. So my sun already has that kind of stormy Ardra Shiva energy, right? The moon for me is down here in Vishaka. But each person has those 4 nakshatras in different places. And those 4 are really the anchor. The sun, moon, ascendant, and ascendant ruler. So if you're interested in that as well, you could also check it out. I'll have the links below this video. But I wanted to just come on because this flooding and this devastation is really awful. Of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone in those devastated areas. I just wanted to make this video real quick because, again, these case studies show up. And again, it's never happy to come out. I'm never happy to come out and talk about these sorts of things, but they are instructive. And again, if you are interested in learning more, and especially because, again, relative to these eclipses and all, I'm not just trying to be cute. These metaphors are real. I already know that there's aspects of all of our lives that have been devastated that we're trying to put back together now to some extent. And so, again, if this was helpful, then, please, share it with others, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.